And the threats to our nations, they don't sleep. They're watching our every move. Iran, Russia, China, North Korea, ISIS, Al-Qaeda. They may be watching this right now. Our military should not be mistaken for a cable news gabfest show. We don't care what you look like. We don't care who you voted for, who you worship, what you worship, who you love. It doesn't matter if your dad left you millions when he died or if you knew who your father was. We have been honed into a machine of lethal moving parts that you would be wise to avoid if you know what's good for you. We will not be intimidated. We will not back down. We don't want war. But if you want war with the United States of America, there's one thing I can promise you, so help me God. Someone else will raise your sons and daughters. Let's clear that the views expressed by our host.
Hey guys, Noelle here. In honor of our soldiers, our military personnel that are currently deployed right now, I wanted to take the time to personally thank you guys from the bottom of my heart for all that you guys do, even the veterans. I also wanted you guys to see our team and what they had written to you guys personally. I wish you all nothing but love and respect.
"60 years went rolling by. It was here we said goodbye. The war was brewing, it was extreme. We were only teens. I knew the day I died, all alone, my brand new bride. Our favorite song would be a sign I'd be back in time. So raise a flag with pride and grace. I seen the pain on a soldier's face. Bring me home, both sides say I'm a soldier of the USA. You weren't alone all these years. Seen you cry, I know your tears. You raised our child and a family, all without me. You've done well with your life, lots of friends by your side. I heard a nightly secret prayer, I was always there. So raise a flag with pride and grace. I seen the pain on a soldier's face. Bring me home, both sides say I'm a soldier of the USA. Now it's time, my lovely wife, to bring you home. Say goodnight. Close your eyes to our favorite song. Can you see me now? Can you see me now? One day we'll come back in time for those we leave behind. But for now, we'll watch them grow. Welcome home.
So welcome to my house. Welcome to my house. 'Cause these are my people.
Interview of the week sponsored by LTD Tactical.
Hey, welcome back, everybody. It's the Big Grizz Show. Today, I am honored to have the CEO, co-founder
Yes.
of the Mighty Oaks Foundation, and a motivational speaker, Mr. Jermey Stalnecker. How are you doing today, sir?
Doing good, man. It's good to be with you. Excited about it.
I appreciate it. So you enlisted as a Marine, correct?
I was commissioned. Yeah, I went through a commissioning program, so I've got to be careful there for all my enlisted friends. I don't want to upset anybody, right? But I went through a commissioning program when I was in college, and I was commissioned in 1999.
What? So were you enlisted first and then commissioned?
I went through a commissioning program, so it was called platoon leaders class. So on paper, I was enlisted first, right? But it was so that I could go to officer candidate school. I went to OCS in 1996 while I was in college, and then we drilled a couple times a year, but it was very unconventional. As part of the education command, and then commissioned to active duty in 99.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how long were you in the Marines, or how long were you a Marine? Obviously,
Yeah,
you are now.
Yeah. So 8 total years. I had 4 active duty years, and then those 4 reserve years. Those kind of required 4 reserve years afterwards. So thankfully, I was able to kind of move on. I was with a non-drilling unit, so really just those 4 active duty years was the majority of my time.
Did you enjoy being a Marine?
Oh, I loved it. Yeah. I mean, it was everything that I had ever wanted to be. Pointed my life toward that from the time I was a teenager. Thought I would stay there forever, and God had different plans. But that was, for me, particularly being an infantry Marine, was the fulfillment, right, of everything I had ever wanted to do as a kid. And through college, I went to college because my parents said, you can't enlist until you go to college. So I had a family friends like, hey, if you're going to college anyhow, you might as well go through a commissioning program and you can do that. But it was all I had ever wanted to do. And it was all that I had hoped it would be.
So did you grow up in a military family, or were you the first and that's just, you knew that's what you wanted to do?
Yeah, it's funny. I wasn't raised in a military family. I had 2 uncles that were Vietnam era. Neither one of them served in Vietnam, but kind of Vietnam era in the 70s, not great enlistments, but both of them were enlisted. My grandfather was in World War II. I think he did a 2-year enlistment, back in the days when they were doing 2-year enlistments in the Army. And that was it. So that was kind of part of my family history, but not anything anyone talked about. It wasn't something that anyone led with. Now, my family, my dad was a pastor, so very conservative, loves America, and really tried to instill those values of you need to serve your community and serve, other people and do the best you can to live for something bigger than yourself. So I think learning about the military and kind of having that as our family culture, if you will, really brought those 2 pieces together. Had some family friends who were Marines or had been Marines, really close family friend who had also served in World War II. He's part of the island hopping campaign as a Marine. And he was an old man. My dad would take me when I was a kid to go sit next to him and just be with him. And I'd hear his stories and he'd talk to me. So yeah, by the time I was old enough to make those decisions, I don't remember it being a hard decision. It was kind of like, this is what I want to do. And this is what I've always wanted to do. And those doors opened.
So you growing up and your dad was a pastor.
Yeah.
What brought you to be infantry versus like a chaplain or a chaplain's assistant?
It's funny. I always joke that, and it is a joke kind of, right? But the one thing you learn growing up in a pastor's home is that you don't want to be a pastor, right? That's the thing man, I love my parents. I still love my parents. I was thankful for what they were doing. I was proud of them, but it was not, ministry was not something I was interested in. It's things like watching my dad started a church. So he would like work nights, then come home. He homeschooled me and my sisters. He was doing all the things you need to do to get a church going. My mom was working full time to make it all work. My dad, sleeping 6 or 7 hours a week before he got to the weekends. Then he could sleep 2 full nights on the weekend. But all of this just to make this thing happen. And again, I was proud of him, but I knew that wasn't the road that I wanted to walk. And for me, hearing about the military and then reading these stories of World War II is what a lot of the books and the stories I was reading and the people I was around. And then learning about the Marine Corps and the history of the Marine Corps and kind of the ethos of the Marine Corps. Honestly, I was probably on my way to becoming a Marine, like in college, before I realized there were things other than the infantry. I just thought like that's what Marines do, right? I'd never heard of a Marine who did anything else. And I quickly learned that, were it not for all of those other jobs, the infantry couldn't do what they did. I understood that, but my heart was always toward that. And it wasn't even about the, all the things we traditionally think of with infantry. It wasn't about the combat per se, but it was just those acts of heroism and taking care of each other and all those stories that we hear that really, I think, got a hold of my heart and motivated me that direction.
Well, I mean, to me, it's the camaraderie that you have.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't beat that. I enlisted as a mechanic. I reclassed into infantry, and I became a MET team. And the camaraderie in my MET team was the same, if not better, than the mechanics I was deployed with in my first deployment.
Yeah.
Now, I mean, don't get me wrong. That's my family. They're my family. I honestly just got off the phone with them 2 days ago, 4-hour conversation. We 3-wayed. I mean, it was, they're always there, but it's that camaraderie level is different. And I don't know if it's because they're out and about doing the same thing, not staying behind the wire, working on stuff. They're actually together.
Yeah. And there's that dependence on each other, I think, is one of the big things that is different. Is you're very aware all of the time in a forward deployed area that you need the people around you. There's no individualism. There's no, like, I could do this on my own. No, like, it doesn't matter if you're the battalion commander or the newest private in the battalion, something in between. You need each other, and you know that, and you know it all the time. So it creates this different level of camaraderie, and a camaraderie that really carries throughout your life. It is a special thing. It really is.
Yeah. What brought you to want to be a Marine? Was it the ideology of what Marines did versus like Army? Because obviously you wanted to be boots on the ground, not in a plane or on a boat. So what was the difference between those that brought you to a Marine?
I think probably just the people I was around. I've been asked that question a lot. I think it was probably just the people that I was around. It was, I called him Mr. Edwards, who was that World War II Marine, had a hard time walking. But man, when my dad would take me over to visit him, right, in his mobile home, not too far from our house, and I'd sit there and listen to his stories and just the stories of being a Marine and being a combat Marine. He was a 30-year Marine. We had a close family friend who, at the time when I was growing up, was an active duty Marine Corps officer and knew a couple of other people. So like that was kind of what I was around. So the Army certainly was there. But everything that I heard and everyone that I interacted with was Marine Corps. And then I think you start to buy into this, like the Marines are, better than everyone else. And you want to be the best. If you want to be the best, you better be a Marine and all that stuff. And then when I was 14 years old, I went to a program that the Marine Corps puts on. It's called Devil Pups. And I think it's actually a nonprofit. So it's probably like Marine Corps adjacent, right? But it's run at Camp Pendleton. And it's for, at the time it was just boys. Now it's boys and girls, 14 to 17 years old. And they run it like a 10-day boot camp. Really what it is a big recruiting effort, but they run it like a 10-day boot camp. So they put you on a bus and they drive you and drop you on the grinder and, do the stuff that you would traditionally see in a boot camp setting. Teach you to drill, teach you, a lot of stuff. It's only 10 days long. But then they also take you to, the range to watch, and then you see all these demos from different units. You go to these static demonstrations, like all this stuff, all this recruiting stuff, right? You don't realize you're being recruited, but you are. And on the other side of that, I'm like, what else is there, right? There's only Marines. That's it. And I had fully drank the Kool-Aid. And for me, again, the thought of even going in another service, it never crossed my mind. Now I have kids now. So I have 4 kids. And when they talk about the military, I'd be proud if any of them went into the Marine Corps, but I'll say things like, hey, have you looked at the Air Force? Right? Like,
I do the same thing.
Professional setting there. You could really do something there. Or, hey, the Army is not just the Army, right? There's so many different units in the Army that you could be a part of and things that you could think about. And you need to at least consider these things. But for me, man, there was no other branch of service. I still make that joke today. Like every Veterans Day, I'll speak somewhere and I'm like, man, I saw you guys stand up. I had no idea there were other branches of the military. It's good to know that it's not just Marines, right? But you kind of buy into that when you're younger, and it's fun, but it drives you for sure.
The Marines do. On that note, we're going to take about a 3.5 minute break, and then we'll be back, and I want to talk some more about the military with you. This is fun.
Let's do it.
Hey guys, Noelle here. In honor of our soldiers, our military personnel that are currently deployed right now, I wanted to take the time to personally thank you guys from the bottom of my heart for all that you guys do, even the veterans. I also wanted you guys
We were not made to live in isolation. Sadly, many of our veterans feel they need to fight their battles alone. This self-isolation has led to the staggering statistic of more than 20 veterans taking their lives every day.
A lot of guys end up drinking, a lot of guys end up losing hope. Some of them will go to the VA and they'll try to get, prescription medications to help with PTSD. They'll get pills for anxiety, they'll get pills because they can't sleep, now they'll get pills for depression before they know it. They're taking 12 different medications. And when it's not working out, these guys lose hope, and that's why there's 23 guys a day committing suicide.
The mission of Mighty Oaks is to eradicate the veteran suicide epidemic and help our warriors change their legacies. As a result, we've been able to help over 4,000 veterans and first responders by equipping them with the tools they need to live the lives they were created to live.
Everything they said just kept hitting me in the heart over and over and over again. It's like all the things that I didn't know that I needed to hear. And I opened my heart to God that week, dude, and I've been a different person ever since.
Our faith-based, peer-to-peer approach has one of the highest success rates of any program available today, offering hope and understanding to those who need it most. We provide our programs and resources, including travel, at no cost to our warriors.
I remember talking to a licensed social worker who actually handed me a pamphlet to Mighty Oaks. So I went. And I'm glad I did.
By aligning their lives to biblical principles, these men and women are able to lead their families, their communities, and our nation. Our mission is to serve and restore our nation's warriors and families who have endured hardship through their service to America, and to help them find new life purpose through hope in Christ. It's your generosity that can make a difference in the lives of the men and women who have fought for our country and our freedoms. Now that they're home, don't let them fight alone. Learn more at mightyoaksprograms.org.
I love that. That was you, the voice over there, right?
It was, yeah. Apparently I'm one of the only guys in our organization that can read, so they always ask me to do the voiceovers. Just kidding.
So when you told me earlier that your first deployment or your deployment was in 2003, correct?
Yeah, so I did a non-combat deployment in it would have been 2001, early 2001, to Okinawa. It's for the Marines, 31st MEU deployment, traditional kind of float. And then my combat deployment was first to Kuwait. We went to Kuwait in January of 2003. And then I know you and I were both there at the same time. And then, so Kuwait, right? Everyone thinks it's funny, like, oh, you're in Kuwait. Well, yeah, but that's because no one was in Iraq yet, or very few people at least. And then we hit the berm and breached the berm. First KIA of the war was one of our guys, Lieutenant Shane Childers. First objective of the war was ours. And then we made our way to Baghdad on April 10th.
Yeah. So how old were you in your first one?
The Okinawa deployment?
No, your actual combat
The
deployment.
combat deployment. I was 25. Yeah, 25.
What was your feelings when you get told that that's your first one or your deployment, that this is what you're doing? Do you remember your emotions at that time?
Yeah, I mean, for me, again, so it's kind of a weird situation, or maybe a little bit of a unique situation. I was a senior first lieutenant, which not because of senior first lieutenant, but I was just getting ready to pin on captain. So I had been in that battalion for a long time. And I had been with the unit that I was with, or the platoon that I was with, for a long time. Typically, turnover is pretty quick, but I was with the same Marines for over 2 years. Our battalion had moved around some of the officers, so I ended up with 2 platoons combined. So I ended up with 84 Marines. I had 18 vehicles. I had all the anti-armor assets. I had all the heavy machine gun assets. My platoon was bigger than a lot of some of the companies in the battalion. So it was just kind of how it worked out, right? Well, we trained together for, like I said, almost 2 years. We knew that if we went into a combat deployment, my platoon would be providing security. I would be navigating. So we had done all this training. We had done all this preparation. And honestly, yeah, when we got hey, we're going to Kuwait, we're probably going to end up in Iraq. It was like, I don't know what this is like, because I'm not a great athlete, right? But I imagine it's like playing AAA baseball and getting told you're going up to the majors and you're going to be playing next week in the big leagues, right? It felt to me, and I think to a lot of our Marines, very much like that. Like, we got called up because this is 2003. Afghanistan had been happening. Mm-hmm. We had gotten waved off. We were supposed to go to Afghanistan, got waved off. We're not going. Thought the wars weren't going to last that long, right? Like, everything's going to end quick. We're going to miss it. We didn't know what was coming, but to get that call, like, hey, we were supposed to go to Okinawa again. Now you're going to Kuwait, and you're probably going to end up in Iraq. Man, it was like, finally, all this training, all this preparation, it was worth it.
It was like a mixture of that and like having a really, really hard gut punch.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
Oh, holy crap, I'm leaving my family. But it was like, I'm ready to go. I'm ready to do what I'm supposed to do.
Right.
It's not,
that's right.
But then you get over there, and I couldn't stop thinking about my family, honestly, until we crossed the berm from Kuwait into Iraq. And then I was just like, okay, now my family's in this truck with me. They're who I need to focus on. But man, that first feeling, that was a hard one to get through.
Well, and it was weird too at that time, because when we went to Kuwait, so people always ask, what that was like, and the base that we went. We didn't go to a base. We flew commercial air from March Air Force Base, or Air Reserve Base, into Kuwait, and they drove us by bus into the middle of the desert and said, "Get out!" Right? Like, there was no base. There was like this area, and there were some Connex boxes there. In the next couple of weeks, things would be built up around us, but there was nothing there. And then we were there for a long time, like several weeks. So so much time to think about home and think about your family and think about just a million things. And then finally you get the call to move.
Yeah, you do. Now I'm curious. Were you in Kuwait when the Scud missile warning went off and everybody had to get in MOP 4?
Yes.
Okay, so was I. So we were in Kuwait at the same time.
Yeah, then we were in MOP 4, basically for like 40 something days, I think, once we hit the berm.
And then having to go through the decontamination and all that. That was man.
Crazy times. Good times.
Oh, not good times, but that just gives me a timeline. Like, okay, we were in Kuwait together. We might not have seen each other, but we were there.
Yeah, crazy.
That's
crazy.
That's too much.
Crazy.
Thinking about it. Yeah. So, as a young lieutenant, were you nervous about running a squad or a platoon, whichever one you were in charge of?
Yeah.
Did that ever faze you?
Man, I've thought about this a lot. Right? Is it that I'm not that smart, or I didn't really comprehend the level of danger and difficulty? It might have been those things. It was also, again, we trained an awful lot. So the intensity of those moments, like those firefights, and we had some pretty major engagements. We hit a bridge that had a major engagement. A lot of people died, bad guys. And then the Battle of Baghdad on April 10th, that was us. And it was a crazy, crazy fight.
I was there too.
so that stuff's happening, right? But no, I was never, and I just say this like honestly, I was never afraid for me or for us. You're so focused on doing the job. I don't know another way to say it. Just so focused and so intense. Um, I think there were times afterwards, for sure, after these engagements, after these firefights, where that's when you kind of feel fear. But in the moment, I was never afraid. I always felt like, look, I know exactly what to do. I don't remember even ever processing it really. Like, what should we do here? It was always like, okay, we know what to do because we've done this, 1,000 times in training. So yeah, your training kicks in. That's what they say, and it's absolutely true.
I know when in my first deployment, I ended up having to run a squad as an E4 for a very short, limited time. And even being at just an E4, that was hard for me to even comprehend that our E5s and E6, what they have to go through constantly, just in knowing that you had to pick people to go outside the wire, or you had to pick people to go on this patrol. No, I'd rather it had just been me. I didn't want to be put in that
Yeah.
position. How were you able to control that where you had to send guys knowing that there could possibly be a firefight coming that direction?
I think it was a little bit different. And you know this, you went back, so you know this. It was different that first time than it was later on. Wherever we were was like the forward edge of battle. So I was navigating for 1-5 for our battalion. I was a second vehicle back, so we had a security vehicle, and then I was a second vehicle. I was navigating on a high power radio, talking to our battalion commander, right? So wherever I was like the most forward edge of the battle space. So I never had that sense of like, I'm sending Marines out to do this thing, or I have to pick, guys to go out and do this thing. It was more the sense of we're doing this together and I'm here with you, and wherever you are, I'm also there. Right. I never had that experience. And I know a lot of people have. After that, 1-5 went back 7 months later, the first Battle of Fallujah. Some of the guys that I served with were killed there. That's a very different environment than what we were experiencing during the push. And so I personally never had to make that decision like, okay, who am I sending to, potentially get into this firefight alone? That was never something I dealt with. We were always right there. Every engagement, I was at the forward edge. And so, yeah, probably a little bit different. And I think in a way it took a lot of pressure off because I didn't have to make that decision, and it was a question of us working together to deal with whatever this problem is in front of us.
So do you remember you were in the first Battle of Fallujah, correct?
I wasn't. 1-5 was. Yeah, 1-5
okay.
was. I got
so
out
and
then 1-5 redeployed back. Yeah.
Yeah, and then they sent us down there to save them because they got into a sticky situation. They sent our whole artillery unit down there, or I think it was two companies, and then some mechanics and some infantry and cavalry, or whatever it was.
Yeah,
we all had to go down there to help pull the Marines out because they ended up getting almost ambushed, and they couldn't handle it with the little bit of people they had.
Yeah.
So they called us in. They called Big Brother in.
I hear you saying that. I'm not sure that's true. I wasn't there, so I can't confirm that the Army had to go in and help out the Marines. But if you're saying it, I'm not going to say you're not telling the truth. Whatever. I wasn't there, so I can't verify it. But
no, I got a lot of Marine buddies, and I flip them crap about that all the time. It's like, oh, so you guys had to call Big Brother in, huh?
Yeah, right. I know it was a bad situation, and even for me. So I transitioned out of the Marine Corps, coming back from that first deployment, or that that Iraq deployment, and I transitioned out and started to move on. And those guys that I served with went back, and so I started to hear about these Marines that were in my platoon that were being killed in Fallujah. And man, it was such a crazy thing. Like, really, kind of to your earlier point, to not be there with them was so hard. To know they're dealing with this and trying to understand it on their own, right? I wasn't that old, but when I was 25 years old, and I had Marines who came to my platoon when they were like just 18 and deploying, they're kids, like teenagers. And I said, I'd take care of you, I'll help you. And then I felt like I had abandoned them. And to hear about how bad Fallujah was at that time was pretty crazy. Yeah, it was pretty crazy.
Yeah, no, that's a hard one that any of us had to deal with. I don't know how many times I I'd be in the talk or doing something else, and I'd have to pick people to go out on a patrol.
Yeah.
And just that stress and that nervousness until they got back.
Right.
Was the hard part.
Right.
That just killed me, and it just wasn't any fun for me on that aspect. That's why,
Right.
I mean, my second deployment, it was along the same type of thing. So we got a comment from Fire Social Worker, and he said, "What inspired you to separate?"
Yeah, that's a big part of my story is, so, I mentioned that for me, becoming a Marine was the goal, right? When I was a kid, that's what I wanted to do.
Jeremy,
Yep.
we're going to take a quick break. I'm going to bring my co-host that I was telling you about. He's in here now. I'm going to bring him up, and then we'll dive into this, and then we'll dive into Mighty Oaks and, what it is and what it means to you.
Let's do it, man.
Been home about 6 months now, and I still have my doubts. Well, I'm not sure how I got here or how I'm gonna get out. Well, my mama says I look the same as I did before I left, but if she could see inside of me, it would scare her to death. I can still taste the powder from the barrel of my gun, and I can hear my sergeant screaming, "Run, soldier, run!" And I can feel the backpack on my shoulders, God, and weigh a ton. And I see death in every single thought. Well, they taught me how to put that uniform on. I just can't get it off. Last Saturday they honored us in a small parade downtown, and when they shot off those fireworks, I nearly hit the ground. And while they smiled and cheered for us, all I could do was stare. 'Cause part of me is here at home, but part of me's back there. Well, I can still taste the powder from the barrel of my gun, and I can hear my sergeant screaming, "Run, soldier, run!" And I can feel the backpack on my shoulders, God, and weigh a ton. And I see death in every single thought. They taught me how to put that uniform on. I just can't get it off. Yeah, there's no end in sight. 'Cause even though I'm home now, I'm still fighting for my life. Well, I can still taste the powder from the barrel of my gun, and I can hear my sergeant screaming, "Run, soldier, run!" And I can feel the backpack on my shoulders, God, and weigh a ton. And I see death in every single thought. Well, they taught me how to put that uniform on. I just can't get it off. Well, the devil's won some battles, and he may win some more, but don't he know the American soldier will always win the war?
So that one hits home. I actually listened to it the whole time on that one. And
Hey,
hey, how you doing? It's afternoon. So,
It's good to
Jeremy,
finally meet you, Jeremy. I've heard a lot about you.
Well, it's great to connect, man. Really great to connect.
So let's go back to that
What's up,
question
Grizz?
real quick
What's up, brother?
on not much. How you doing? Let me reread it about separating. What
Yeah.
what did he say?
Grizz,
He
you
said, "What
muted?
inspired you to separate?"
Yeah. So for me, there were a lot of factors, right? So I came into the Marine Corps, like I said, in '96. That was a peacetime Marine Corps. I was excited about being a Marine, but there wasn't a whole lot going on. And, for those that were, kind of my age, you remember that the '90s was, we had Somalia, we had Desert Storm. Those were incredible, right? But they were short. They didn't last. So most of the military was peacetime. You're dealing with a lot of peacetime stuff. We thought that we had gotten passed over for Afghanistan and that we were going back to Okinawa. We missed the war, right? It's not going to last. We just missed it. And so in that process, I had looked down the road. I was married. I had 2 little kids, and looked down the road and just thought, I'm not sure I can do the peacetime Marine Corps thing. I don't think I can continue to just train and get ready for something that's not going to happen. The church that I was a part of, the pastor there offered me a job. I don't have a Bible degree, but the church was growing. There was a lot of stuff happening. And so he said, if you'll come on staff, we've got projects and other stuff for you to manage and oversee. And so I accepted that. And my wife found us a house, and all these things started to happen. And then instead of going to Okinawa, I went to Kuwait and then into Iraq. Had I known what the wars were going to be like, I may have made different decisions, but it just seemed like God was really leading our path to go a different direction and to serve in a different way, which for me at the time was vocational or church ministry.
So, Larry, can you explain what Lady Liberty Foundation is and how you came up with
Grizz, you're muted, brother.
No, I'm not.
So, Jeremy, you said what area was that in? Was it in California, or where were you at?
Yeah, that was we were attending a church in Oceanside, California, right outside of Camp Pendleton, and so that was that was the place. So I came back from Kuwait or from Iraq, and then like 30 days later, I was out of the Marine Corps and working on church staff. So pretty crazy transition. Yeah, it's pretty crazy.
Okay, can you guys hear me?
Well, I haven't said it yet, but appreciate you and your service, man. Especially you continuing to serve, Christ like you're doing, man.
Yeah.
It's the best thing.
Well, thanks, man. Yeah,
Grizz probably had to jump out to get his mic figured out.
I don't. Can you guys hear me?
Yep,
I can hear you.
Yeah,
there it is.
Okay. I don't know what that was. It wasn't showing me muted. So my question was, Larry, with Lady Liberty Foundation, what brought you to the outline for Lady Liberty Foundation?
Well, it's a pretty cool story. A lot of that started with TikTok. Okay, so I'm a first responder. I unfortunately I wasn't able to join the military, even though the judge wanted me to a couple different times. That's a whole nother story. That's testimony talk.
Yeah.
But I was on TikTok. As kind of faith fitness was my thing, and I knew my wife Noelle from that, right? She wanted to get involved and do more. Her ex-husband came out of Afghanistan, kind of messed up in the Air Force, and caused a little damage. And she just saw the change in him and wanted to do more for our military members. And she saw such a need because she, this guy that she knew from high school and fell in love with came back just broken.
Yeah.
And so, she wanted to do more. And then I've always been service minded. I've always loved helping people in any way that I can. It's just my heart. I'm the guy pushing somebody out of the side of the road. I'm the guy getting them gas. I'm the guy getting the turtle. I just did it today. Got another turtle. Got another turtle out of the middle of the road in Florida, and almost caused a wreck. It was like 20 cars behind me, pissed off, but I did it. But ultimately, it was just being service minded and having the heart for that. Her and I were friends, and I was trying to help her navigate it because I've owned multiple businesses, and then I ended up splitting up with my ex. She left me, and Noelle, I guess, saw an opportunity because she kind of knew me a little bit and said, shoot your shot. And next thing you know, we're talking and getting together. And then she is already painting her face and doing things on live for bringing awareness to a lot of different things, but especially veterans and first responders. And then we kind of got together, and it grew from there. It really was her baby, her and our group and our Discord. It was their baby. I just kind of helped see it to the finish line and really kind of got the ball rolling.
So now I know you've told me that you based a lot of Lady Liberty Foundation's outline on the Mighty Oaks because you knew who Jermey was before I did.
So I remember when I was doing the research about a 501c3 and how it worked, how it operated. I remember I was just digging. And I don't know if somebody referred me to your site or if I found it on my own, but I looked through it. I dove in. I looked at all the profiles, all of your board members and all of your advisors, and I was just like, you know what, this is doing everything we could do in every way possible and pointing everything right back to Jesus. This is what it's about for me. And we actually modeled Lady Liberty based on, we can help. We raise funds for vets and people in need, right? We do that. But, we can help somebody any day, make their mortgage payment or their car payment or get medicine or whatever. But if we're not building the kingdom and bringing them into the kingdom, it's really all for nothing. It's really ash, right? And that's what I say. So I love the idea, the principles, the way you guys are structured, Jermey. So just want to let you know, I was pretty looking.
That's awesome, man. That's super cool to hear. And it's funny because a lot of people will look at what we do and the way we do it, and they'll say, we appreciate what you guys do. Maybe we're Christians, and so we appreciate that. But it seems like there's this idea that you have to separate service and you have to separate, helping people from faith, which is crazy, I think. but that's awesome. I'm really, because I agree, you can do 1,000 things for people, but if you're not pointing them to Jesus, then at the end of the day, it falls short. And so that's what we're called to do, which is really cool. That's cool.
What brought you to be a co-founder, the founder of Mighty Oaks?
Yeah, I mean, that's a really long story, but I'll give you the abbreviated version, right? So when I started working at the church, it was like a terrible transition. My identity was a mess because I so identified with the Marine Corps. I was super frustrated. I almost got fired. Like, you're on a church staff and you get fired. That's a pretty big deal, right? Right? Like, so I was causing so many problems there. I was a mess at home. My wife had a lot of good reasons to walk away, and she didn't, and I'm thankful she didn't, but it was kind of a disaster. And then I had some people confront me and help me walk through that and get me on my feet. And I was able to move forward. But part of moving forward for me was I had to make a decision to stop looking over my shoulder and stop saying, I should go back there, or I should go back to the Marine Corps. I should do this or that. And so I cut out all of the people that I had served with. I didn't stay in touch with anybody. I was proud of what we had done. I was proud that I had brought those guys home, but I felt like, my job here is done. I need to move on. And I did for 10 years. Then I had a guy, I'm trying to build my life, right? And God's working in my life and things are happening. But I had one of the Marines that I served with reach out to me 10 years later through social media. He's like, hey, I met this guy. His name's Chad. He's starting this thing called Mighty Oaks, and he's having a hard time getting veterans to attend. And he said, if I would bring some of the old platoon, we could do a program. So I was like, well, it's been 10 years. It's probably okay. And I went to that. I met Chad. He was starting Mighty Oaks. From that point until now, we've been working on Mighty Oaks together. But that was the first time I was back with the guys that I had served with. And I started to hear stories. So I was proud of bringing all these guys home from combat. And then I started to hear these stories of suicides and broken marriages and just broken lives. And for the first time in my life, realized that I still had an obligation to those guys, that putting the uniform in the closet for the last time, that didn't mean my obligation, my promises to them ended. God had done something in my life, and I had learned how to move forward in spite of these things that I had walked through. And I had an obligation now to help others do the same thing. And so that was kind of the aha moment, if there is one. That was the genesis for me that said, all right, whatever else you're doing in your life, you also need to invest in these Marines. And at the time, it was a very specific group of people. It has since expanded, we've had over 5,000 now come through our programs, and so many other things happen. But at the time, it was like, I need to reach these guys that I served with, and I need to help them take some of the steps forward that I have been able to take because of the people in my life.
It's it's kind of amazing. I'm hearing your story and I'm going, I tell people all the time, like, don't shy away from the tough times. Don't shy away from that you go through, because those are all things that God has put in your life.
Yeah, that's right.
Others, right? So all of a sudden you go to the Marines, you go do your thing. You're like, okay, I'm done with that. Check that box. And God's like, no.
Yeah, right. That's right.
All that for a reason.
Yeah.
And let's bring this full, because then you were out of alignment with what God had for you, right?
Yeah.
And that's why there was problems at the church.
Yeah. And 1 Corinthians or 2 Corinthians chapter 1 says that we go through a lot of the things that we go through so we can be a comfort to others, and we can share with them the comfort that we've been comforted with, right? And this idea of redemption in the Christian world, we can talk about it in terms of salvation, but we redeem the broken moments of our life when we allow the lessons that we've learned to be of value to other people. And that's the whole thing, is like, it can be a wasted experience in your life, even if you learn from it, but you redeem it, you make it valuable when you say, I've got this thing and I'm going to use it to help other people. And when I look at the veteran community and the first responder community, we serve a lot of first responders. It really is us in this community that have been through these things that need to help each other continue to move forward. That's the only way it happens. And so when we realize that, it changes our outlook on the whole thing. It changes our perspective entirely.
Oh, big time. Hey, guys, we're going to take a quick break, and we'll be back to dig more into what Mighty Oaks does and who they are.
Yeah.
Another regular day, nobody knows. It's that time, he's coming home to them from a foreign land. He pulls up, his mama cries, looks at daddy with tears in his eyes and says, nothing feels better than this. Couple of months go by and no one sees. Something just ain't right, only wants his peace. He needs help, but he don't know the path to take or the way to go to be free and put his mind at ease. We will help, 'cause we can't stand to see a soldier go to God by their own hands. We will do everything we can to make 22-0 again. He gets help, but he still feels off. Sees an ad on the TV about a dog batting said, this is a man's best friend. Whoa, so he goes one day and he picks it up. Never thought a dog could bring so much love and put a smile on his face. But he's finally found a saving grace. He needs help, but he don't know the path to take or the way to go to be free. Put his mind at ease. We will help, 'cause we can't stand to see a soldier go to God by their own hands. We will do everything we can to make 22-0 again. Whoa, whoa. He needs help, but he don't know the path to take or the way to go to be free. Put his mind at ease. We will help, 'cause we can't stand to see a soldier go to God by their own hands. We will do everything we can to make 22-0 again.
We live in a country with nearly 23 million veterans. Sadly, many of those who have served come home carrying the invisible scars of war. With 22 veteran suicides each day, these men and women often live in despair. Mighty Oaks Warrior Programs challenges these warriors to pursue a purpose beyond their service. By acknowledging the difficulties they face, we equip them to embrace a bright future. There is a solution to the brokenness experienced by so many. For more information or to be a part of that solution, visit us at mightyoaksprograms.org.
Right. So we're back. So anybody listening, so you guys know all these songs that MBR has been playing really today and probably through this weekend for Memorial Day, they're all veterans. Not a single one of them. It's not an outside song. They're all veterans that have come back and they write their own songs and they're performing them and we're playing them.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
But on that note, so Jermey, with Mighty Oaks Foundation, what do you guys center on or focus on to help healing vets?
So we do a lot of things as an organization. We have an international effort where we work with chaplains in other countries. We have resiliency teaching and training. We do conferences and other things. But the core of our program and how we started was what we call a legacy program. We bring men or women to one of our facilities across the country. We have 5 locations that we do programs. And they'll come and they'll spend 5 days with us. And it's really not that long, 5 days. But during that 5 days, we have instructors and team leaders and our leadership team. They've all been through our program. They found hope and healing through our program, a relationship with Christ. And we then train them up so they could stand in front of a classroom and teach. And during that week, we talk about trauma. We talk about, these issues related to post-traumatic stress. We talk about that, but really we move quickly beyond that to an understanding that if we will learn how to align our lives to the life God created us to live, right? We believe there's a creator. He created us with purpose. And if there's purpose, then there's hope, and we can move forward in spite of what's happened to us. When we realize that, we get a hold of that, and the stuff in our past, it's still there, but it doesn't have to bind us anymore. We're not chained anymore. We're not victims of that. We can move forward in a good way. And so
I love that.
We talk about that for a week. And again, the people teaching it are people who can say, I know where you are because I've been there. I've struggled the same way that you've struggled. I don't have it all figured out, but I'm a few steps further down the road and I want to help you. So we quickly tear down those walls of no one knows what it's like to be me. No one's ever experienced this because everyone in the room is very similar, right? We've all been through it. Mm-hmm. It's all veterans, active duty service members, or first responders sitting there. And so we get past that you don't know what it's like to be me thing really, really quick. And we're very upfront about, hey, everyone appreciates your service, but no one's here to say thank you for your service. We've all served. So we're not going to talk about that. What we're going to talk about is how we can move forward together. And we have as our center point a relationship with Christ. And then beyond that 5 days, we spend the next 6 months staying in weekly contact with our graduates, connecting them to the resources they need, whether it's counseling or substance abuse stuff or marriage resources, or whatever it is. We'll walk that out with them so that they can make the decisions when they're with us, and then they can walk that out on the other side of that time. So in a nutshell, that's pretty high level, but that's what we do. And it's so basic, man. But when we started doing this, we just said, we're going to tell other people what we've learned. And again and again and again, understanding God has a plan for your life, and you need to walk into that. That's the light bulb moment for so many people.
It is. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely happened with me. 3 years ago, after I had my strokes, I met my wife, and I got brought back into how I grew up in a Christian church, where when I enlisted, it was so hard to even believe anything, especially to have faith in somebody that is putting me in a country that knows I'm going to hurt people. And it was hard for me to even have that faith. But when I got out and the struggles I went through, I tried dealing with on my own. And it got to the point I had 2 strokes and I was in the hospital bed. And then I met my wife, and she took me to her church. And honestly, the pastor of the church, you guys see me, I'm not a very approachable guy out in public. I don't look nice. And the senior pastor of our church pushed people out of the way, walked up to me and gave me a hug and said he was glad I was there. Never met him in my life, never once before. And it's completely changed my life.
Yeah.
To the point where I think what me and Larry are trying to do with Lady Liberty is identical to what you're doing, except for, we don't have a 5-day camp or anything set up for anybody, but it's getting my story out there and my testimony out there and how it's affected me and the person I am now. And hopefully vets can see that and they can go, maybe that's a real thing.
Yeah, that's good. That's good, man.
So in those 5 days with Mighty Oaks, is it just classes, or do you guys do any sort of like group unity type stuff or anything like that with you?
We have a couple of recreational activities. We have horseback riding and a couple of other things, but those are more just to break up the week, right? We spend a lot of time in classroom, but it's not just instruction. So it's instruction followed by these breakouts. You're assigned to a team. You're in the same team with the same 4 or 5 people all week. So when you hear a class, you then take that into your team, and the question is asked, all right, how does that apply to you? What are some specific areas you failed here? What are some specific areas you've done well? What are some things you want to change? And so we drive really hard for transparency and honesty. And that really is the power. The classes are important because they kind of set the stage or prime the pump, but it's sitting down and talking through that with other people that is super powerful.
So what do you think, what is the success rate of graduate versus non-graduates through your program today?
Yeah, it's hard to put a number on that, right? But when we look at just things like suicide, we've had over 5,000 graduates come through our programs. And I'd like to say that none of our graduates have taken their lives, but I think 3 have over the last 12 years. But again, if you put that up against the national average, that's a very high success rate.
Extremely high.
Marriages, being restored, and we've had some PhD level studies done on us, and through whatever those statistical models are, we've been told that we're about 30% more successful than VA programming, and really it's the faith component that's what's different, right? So it's hard to put a number on that, but I will say that there are thousands of men and women who've had their lives changed because we've helped them, we've pointed them into a relationship with God, their creator, through Christ.
So faith really does help with PTSD. I know it has with me. It has calmed me down drastically.
Yeah.
I didn't believe it. I didn't think anything that it would, but I see myself now, and it's a big difference. Now, Larry, you were about to say something. I cut you off. I'm sorry.
Oh, that's okay, brother. It just comes to mind that recent study is that, without faith, you can't live in gratitude. Without gratitude, you can be susceptible to all the different nuances, anxiety and fear, and, and all of the things that come with PTSD, but if you're living in gratitude, if you're daily grateful for everything around you and you see God's handiwork in your life in so many ways, you can't help but be successful in life, because you're living in gratitude, and therefore you are standing out saying, I am successful because of my faith. I am successful and I am grateful every day because of it. And so I think that's the biggest thing that comes with anything that's faith-based. I mean, when you have Jesus in your life, you're being led in a whole different way. You know, your objective and your perspective is just night and day from what it is without.
Well, and the crazy thing is, you know, we're all people of faith. Like, it doesn't matter what you say. We're all putting our faith in something. We're putting it in ourselves. We're putting it in the system. We're putting it in something. But anything apart from the eternal creator of the universe, God, is going to fail us, right? Your faith is only as good as its object. So if your object is fallible, and we're fallible, the systems are fallible, the people around us are fallible, as good as they may be, they're not perfect. So if your faith is in something other than God, you're standing on a foundation that is susceptible to falling apart. And so trying to build a life on a foundation that is not firm, eventually you're going to come to the end of that. And so faith is the foundation for the rest of it. You can build your life if you're standing on the right foundation. And then you bring in some of these other things, right? There's so many other things you can add to that, but you have to have a foundation of faith that says, my trust, my confidence, my hope is in God, who's bigger than me, outside of this space and time, has a plan for me, and will remain faithful.
So I'm going to show a comment here from, you know, Larry's wonderful wife down there that paints, and it's actually a question for you, Jeremy.
Please.
And it says, what's a phrase you tell people to keep their flame lit and to keep carrying on?
So I have a phrase, and it's the title of a book. It's the title of my podcast, and it's something I talk about all the time, right? So I'll share that one. I use the phrase "march or die," and "March or Die" is my podcast. "March or Die" is a book that I wrote, and the principle is this: in life, when things are happening around us, we feel like our world is out of control, things are spinning out of control. We have to make a decision, and everyone has to make this decision. Are you going to stay where you are and die? Right? And this may not be physical death, but that emotional, spiritual, relational death, that giving up, saying, I just can't go anymore. You make that decision. Nobody does that for you. You can make that decision. Are you going to stay where you are and die? Or are you going to march? Put one foot in front of the other and keep moving forward. And for me, that's become kind of the moniker of my life is march or die. Like everything in life, there may be 1,000 different nuances, but there are really only two choices. You get to decide. Are you going to stay where you are and die? Are you going to give up? Or are you going to live a life of faith, taking one step after the other until you get to the place you need to be to better deal with the enemy in front of you? So will you march or will you die? That's the phrase I use.
That's awesome. I love it. Mine's the past determines who you are, but doesn't determine who you're going to be.
That's good.
And that's what I tell people all the time. And I mean, it definitely makes people sit there and think, like, what does that mean? Well, think about it. Determines who you are right now, but in a second, you can be a totally different person. That's on you.
That's good. That's good.
She also wants to say thank you for your selflessness and for being a light and guiding others to faith.
Well, I'm thankful for all of us that are willing to speak into it. That's why I love doing shows like this one, right? Because it really is just us trying to do the same for a lot of other people. And we use each other's platforms as kind of that bullhorn to share the message. So thank you guys for making it possible.
So these last couple minutes, Larry, you got anything else to say?
Yeah, I have a quick question for you, Jeremy. So how do you take and teach these these military men, these bruisers, these fighters, these guys that are, have all this training to just tear things up? How do you teach them to have a servant's heart? I know God has everything to do with it in changing them, but there's got to be some type of a lesson of saying, hey, no, put all that macho crap to the side.
Yeah.
And serve everybody around you, including Christ.
Yeah. So the title of that 5-day program is the Legacy Program, and that's obviously very intentional. We have a class during the week that we call the Legacy class, and that's the tone of the whole week. The question is this: what are you leaving behind? What are you leaving behind that matters? What are you leaving behind that's valuable? And you can cut through a lot of noise and a lot of the, like you said, the macho stuff or whatever. you can cut through an awful lot when you get down to this question. What are you leaving behind? Because we're all leaving something behind. You're going to have a legacy, whether you want to or not. Use whatever analogy you want. Our life is writing a story, right? Or whatever. But something will be said about you. You're leading people somewhere. And the question is, where are you taking them? I like, I use a couple word pictures, but one of the things I like to talk about when I'm talking about this is, I have 4 kids, and I have to ask myself the question, if after I died, my kids only had my footsteps to follow, they could only step where I've stepped, talk to who I've talked to, look at what I've looked at, have the conversations I've had. If that was all they could do, they had to follow in my footsteps and do the things that I've done, would I be proud of where they ended up?
Oh, wow.
Like, to me, that cuts through a lot, right? Because then I have to evaluate my life and realize, you know what? It's not really about me. It's about what I'm leaving behind to carry other people forward.
Wow.
That's fire. That's great. That's great.
No, yeah, that hits home on a lot of avenues. So
that's the servant's heart, right? And military guys, first responders, you have that. That's what drove most of us to going into that kind of service. It's not a radical change. It's just a shift of focus. And I think once we get a hold of that, like, oh, I can live for something. I can continue to live for something bigger than myself. Man, that's why guys who get it, they get it, and they get it and move forward quickly. Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, Jermey, do you have anything else you'd like to say before we wrap this up?
The only thing I'd like to add is, go to our website, mightyoaksprograms.org. You can see that on the screen. But our program is free to veterans, active duty service members, and first responders. And the cost of travel. We cover the cost of travel as well. So if you fall into that category, all you have to do is apply, and we'll take care of everything else. And we'd love to have you join us.
Well, that's awesome. I want to thank both you gentlemen for being on here. We're so much aligned that it was just great that you guys reached out to me to get you on here, just because of what both of me and Larry and his wife and what we're trying to do. It's what you've already built up, and it gives us that ray of light to look forward. Like, this can happen. We just have to keep driving forward and marching forward.
That's it.
And doing the same thing. And that was very inspirational. I'm pretty sure I can say for me it was. I'm pretty sure Larry is, because he kind of thinks like me, that we've come to realize.
So, in most things, Chris, you're a little twisted.
in most
things.
But I want to thank you guys both.
What's that, Larry? Jermey, I appreciate what you're doing. I would love to model what we're doing in some manner, some way. We know that there's no shortage of vets out there that need help, and first responders, of course. So I know that you're on par with, rocking and rolling with anybody that can help because of your heart and your heart for Christ. But I'd love to connect with you beyond this and
do it
and just get a good little, path in the direction that we need to go, because you've done it. So thank you.
Thank you. Right. Yeah, let's do it. Just stay connected.
You guys hang out in here while I end the show, and we'll talk a little bit more offline about that.
Okay.
That's the show for today, everyone. Thanks for listening. We'll be back next week with an all-new show. And remember, you can listen to us again and again. The podcast of this radio show is available right after we go off the air tonight, anywhere that you can get your podcast episodes. And thanks for joining us today. I'd like to take a moment to talk about something close to my heart. Military Broadcast Radio is doing incredible work to support our veterans and bring their voices to the world. They rely on your generous donations and your dedicated volunteer hours to make it happen. I encourage you to consider supporting NBR in any way, form that you can.